What's going on, everyone? I am Bubbles BuzzerBeater, and this is the unofficial official BuzzerBeater YouTube channel, back again with another video. Pretty quick intro this time. I just wanted to say that I hope all of you stick around towards the end of the video, where I showed the 2 winners for my giveaway that I just did. And also, I hope you enjoy this video, where I talk about the tier list that I have for BuzzerBeater offenses and defenses. So this is going to be my personal tier list on offenses that I think work the best in BuzzerBeater. Obviously, the offenses depend on what players you have, but I think in general this is my belief on the tiers for offenses. If you have players that specifically excel in certain areas, this can change slightly, but for the most part, I feel pretty confident with my tier list. So first, for superior, pretty common knowledge, look inside is the most dominant offense in BuzzerBeater, and it's the one that most people run if they want to win games. So I think that is the only one in that tier. And then I'm going to go by just offense instead of tier, just so I can kind of talk about each one. So base offense, I don't think it's worth a D. I think it's a C. It's not one that I run very often at all. I don't think it's a terrible offense, but it's definitely not one that I lean towards. So base offense is going to be in C tier. And then push the ball is really interesting. I think it's one of the more polarizing offenses in BuzzerBeater. I think I personally like it more than a lot of other managers do. So I'd be tempted to put it in A tier, but I think it probably ends up in B tier. So we're going to leave it there for now, and then we're going to look afterwards and see if I want to change anything. But for now, it's going to be in B tier. Running gun, also going to be in B tier. For those of you that are shocked it's not higher, I've always been a fan of motion more than running gun, so I'll go ahead and slide this one up here right now. Motion I'm going to have in A tier, running gun in B tier. I don't quite like how quick the pace is for running gun, and I just feel like defense for perimeter defense is so overpowered in BuzzerBeater that I think the extra jump range that you need in order to excel in running gun just isn't worth it, and I feel like motion is just more effective in my experience with it. For inside isolation, I'm going to slide that into B tier as well. I think it's a suitable offense for a lot of situations if you're trying to dodge game day prep guesses, or if you have players that you think work well in it. I like having bigs in there that can score but also distribute pretty well, and then I think if you have some good shooters at small forward and shooting guard, then inside isolation also works really well. Outside isolation, this is going to be the first one I put in D tier. I've run outside isolation, I think 5 or 6 times in the last 2 seasons, and just every time I run it, it does something weird. I feel like shot distributions are off. I feel like the players that I would think would be shooting in outside isolation offenses aren't shooting, and I've just never really liked it. So I feel like if you're thinking about running outside isolation, you might as well just run inside isolation, or base offense would even be better in my opinion. Next one is low post. I'm gonna put low post in A tier. It's not up there with look inside, obviously, but it's still one of the better offenses you can run, and it slows the pace down and gives you a better chance against opponents who might have better players than you. I think slowing down the pace is always a good idea against better teams, but with that inside focus, it's going to be one of the better offenses. And then Princeton, I'm going to put in D tier. I don't have a whole lot of experience with it, so this is one that could, in theory, rise up the boards if I start playing it more. But I just think Princeton requires too much passing, and it's an outside offense, which I think is already at a disadvantage. But it just doesn't suit a lot of teams and a lot of players, in my opinion. And then our last two is we have Reverse Patient and Patient. So for those of you that have not seen my Reverse Patient video, I'll link that in the description and see if I can get it on screen as well. But it'll definitely be in the description. And these two offenses play out very, very differently. So that's why there's two different bars instead of just Patient. But I think Reverse Patient, A tier. I think it's one of the better options you can actually play if you're going against a man-to-man defense. And I think it can lead to a lot of wins. Whereas Patient is not nearly as effective with all the players in their normal positions. I don't think it's D tier. Yeah, I think it has to belong in C tier. I don't think it's quite as effective as an inside isolation, push the ball, run and gun. I don't think it's on that level, but it's definitely not as bad as outside isolation or Princeton. So I think base offense and Patient are pretty standard, where they're not something that I would run. I mostly stick to these top 7 offenses for my teams, but I don't think it's a throwaway offense, so I don't think if you run it you're just killing your team, but it's definitely not one that I lean towards. So now for my defenses, there's obviously not as many options, and honestly I think there's only about half the defenses that I would ever use and the other half I would never use. So my defensive tiers will be kind of polarizing between the good ones and the bad ones, but we'll go ahead and go through it. I don't think there's any S tier defenses in BuzzerBeater. I think man-to-man is A tier, pretty standard what most people end up playing. And then 3-2 zone I think is also A tier. So I think these are the two offenses that are the most dominant in BuzzerBeater. And 3-2, depending on your roster, has a chance to go up to that S tier if your roster fits a 3-2 zone perfectly. But I think for the most part, there is not an S tier. I think they're both going to be A tier. And then 2-3 zone, I think is going to be below it. I think you'll see a lot of people run 2-3 zone against look inside or low post if they're assuming you're going to run inside, and I think it works okay. If an opponent runs a neutral or outside offense, though, against a 2-3 zone defense, it's not going to work out very well for the person running the 2-3 zone more times than not. And then for 1-3-1, yeah, it's going to be C tier. 1-3-1, it's not one I'll ever play, really. I think the only 3 defenses that I actually play are man-to-man, 3-2 zone, and 2-3 zone. I think 1-3-1 zone is more of a gimmick and one that could be successful in lower leagues if you know your opponent's playing motion or running gun or Princeton. But for the most part, I don't ever see it run at anything Division 3 or higher and be successful. So I think it's going to be C tier. And then the outside boxing one and inside boxing one, they're both C tier. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them, but why not just play man-to-man if you're trying to play outside boxing one or inside boxing one? I don't think they necessarily work like BuzzerBeater was hoping when they designed them and added them into the game. I'd rather just do man-to-man defense and put defensive switches on whoever I want my best defender to be on. I think that works way better than trying to run one of these. And then full court press. Full court press is trash. The only time you should ever use it is if you are so much better than your opponent, you're trying to gain point differential, or if you're just throwing a game and you're trying to lose as many points as possible. There's no real reason to ever run it. So that's the only reason these 3 aren't lower. I would give full court press an F if I could, but sadly there's not that tier for it. But I think that's the worst defense you can possibly run. And as I said before, man-to-man, 3-2 zone, and 2-3 zone are the only defenses that I personally recommend ever running. I would never run any of these other ones. But yeah, so that's going to do it for the defenses. And I'm gonna quickly look over my offense and defense setup and just see if I want to change anything, and then I'll be back. Okay, so after looking at my tier list, I think on offense, I'm keeping everything the same. I feel pretty good about this. Like I said, I feel like I'm slightly higher on push the ball than a lot of people, so that I might slide up to an A tier, but I think it's very similar to inside isolation in terms of effectiveness. So I'm going to keep that in B tier. I like my list that I have. And then the only thing that I changed for defense is I actually went and I added the F tier because I think full court press is just that garbage. And then, like I was talking about, man-to-man, 3-2 zone, and 2-3 zones are the only offenses that I play and the only ones I would recommend playing. And I think from 2-3 zone to 1-3-1 or the box defenses, I think there's such a substantial drop-off that I think sliding all of those down to D tier, now that full court press can be a tier lower still in F tier, I think that makes more sense to me. So that is how I'm going to leave my tier list for offense and defense. I'd love to have some feedback from you guys and see what offenses and what defenses do you primarily run or like to run. So it's now been 48 hours since I posted my last video, and you guys did not disappoint. I now have well over 100 subscribers for this awesome BuzzerBeater YouTube channel, and you guys hit the likes quota for the video as well. So I will be giving away 2 3-month supporters to different managers, or if they prefer doing the full year of the second team option in Utopia, I can also do that for these guys. So I am going to just scroll through and show you all the teams, and these are the people that commented their team names below the video. I double checked it, made sure I had everyone on here. But yeah, so we will go ahead and spin to see who the 2 winners are going to be. So this is going to be for the first one. We have the Sun Valley crew. Congratulations to them. And then for the second team, we have PDX Wild. So if you guys haven't seen a BB mail from me after watching this, please reach out. I should have already sent you one by the time you watch this video to get your preference on what you want, and then I can set that up for you. And once again, thanks everyone for liking and subscribing. I really appreciate the support. But yeah, have a good one, guys.